Have you ever wondered how much Airbnb hosts actually make? Well, in this video, I'm gonna break that down for you in detail. I'm gonna show you exactly how much Airbnb hosts are really making. We're gonna jump into a property analysis. I'm actually gonna show you how I picked a really solid area for Airbnb from AirDNA's Best Places to Invest report. So we're gonna show you one of the best markets to invest in right now in Q3 of 2022. I'm also gonna show you a specific property and we're gonna break it down and see if this exact property is actually gonna make money. And it's a property that's for sale right now. So we're gonna see, is it a good investment? I'm gonna show you behind the scenes so you can see how much these properties are actually making on Airbnb. We're gonna show some real properties and the real numbers behind them. All right, so the market I've chosen is a market called Sneads Ferry. So this is a market that showed up on the Best Places to Invest report from AirDNA. Now that's basically this big, huge expensive report they have. It's an enterprise level report that gives us data on exactly which markets in North America are the best ones to invest in. Now Sneads Ferry made the list in Q3 of 2022. And so as of Q3, it was a really solid market. So I want to test that. Now obviously doesn't mean that every single property is going to be a good investment. But if we jump in here, let's first take a look at some of the properties here in Sneads Ferry. So if we zoom in a bit, you can see there's a whole bunch of properties right along the coast here. So just if we zoom out to give you some context of where this is in North Carolina, right along the ocean there. So you can see that we're right along the coast. And most of the properties, unsurprisingly, are right along the coastline. Those properties will do really well on short-term rental, but let's see exactly how well. So if we zoom in, you'll see here there's a bunch of different properties, a bunch of different numbers from 30,000, 50,000. You can see some of them are doing really well, like this one's doing $94,000. So just to give you an idea, here's a property that did in 333 days it was available last year. This property generated $94,000 in that 1 year. So this is the listing on Airbnb or on VRBO, I should say. You can see it's right on the beach here. It's a beautiful property. They've even got some video here. It's a pretty island vibe inside. It's like a beachy type home inside. Not incredibly well decorated, I wouldn't say, and yet it still raked in almost $100,000 in 1 year. So that's pretty awesome, especially considering that it was only available for 330 days out of the year. So the owners got to use this for a month out of the year, and yet they still were able to bring in $100,000. That's a pretty sweet way to own a vacation home, if you ask me. Here's another one that brought in $190,000. So if you've ever wondered, the top end of what a host can earn on Airbnb is absolutely insane. VRBO, that kind of thing. So this is a $200,000 almost that it brought in 1 year. You can see this property is a lot more luxurious, a lot higher end than the first one we looked at. Looks like it's got its own private elevator inside, which is pretty epic. And so you can see that Airbnb hosts can make a lot of money. But I know a lot of you guys are probably thinking, well, yeah, but this home with a private elevator is probably really, really expensive to buy. So is there actually going to be a good return on investment? Like if I were to buy one of these as a vacation home or as an investment property, and I wanted to make some good returns on it, could I do that? And so what I want to do is jump into a specific property that I found on the market right now in Sneads Ferry. Now, bear in mind, I don't know how this investment analysis is going to turn out. I haven't actually looked into the numbers for this property. We're going to do it together right now in real time. And so ultimately in this market, there are some really solid properties. The reason it showed up on the BPTI report from AirDNA is not just because there's a lot of upside potential on the amount of income it makes, but also because this property specifically can, properties in this area, I should say specifically, go for the amount that they sell for relative to the income they can generate is really solid. So the BPTI report, in case you aren't familiar with it, is basically a report that compares the average purchase price in an area with the average revenue for an area. And so it's not just looking at what areas produce the highest revenue, but also considering which areas are actually good investments and are going to give a good overall return. And so this property is just one that I've picked at random here. You can see there's a whole bunch of properties listed for sale in Sneads Ferry. And so I just picked one that I thought looked kind of cool. And it's at 123 Gemstone Drive. So right off the bat, looking at it, I can see that the seller has dropped the price $33,000, and the seller is also offering a $10,000 buyer credit. And so that means that we're going to basically put the purchase price in here. We're going to assume $10,000 less than this, but I actually think we can negotiate that. If I were actually putting an offer in trying to buy this property, I assume that you could get it for quite a bit less than the list price, given that it's been on the market for a little while. It's had a drop in price. The seller seems to be quite motivated, hence the credit that they're offering. And so based on that, I think it could sell for closer to 450, potentially even less, but let's just put it in at 478 into our analysis spreadsheet. So if you're not familiar with this spreadsheet, this is the spreadsheet that I use to analyze every single deal that I come across for short-term rental. If you haven't picked it up yet, make sure you grab your free copy in the link in the description down below. We've got that completely free for you guys, so make sure you pick it up, because this tool is what I use for every single deal I invest in, and it's really, really helpful for running the numbers, and you'll be able to see exactly how it works in this video here as well. So closing costs are auto-calculated there. Home inspection, I'm gonna leave at $500. And then the furniture and interiors package, let's just see. It doesn't look like this property is being sold furnished. Let me just see. Blah, blah, blah. You can potentially negotiate that in, but let's just take a look and actually look through the pictures, see what it looks like, see what the inside is actually like. You can see it's on the water, which is really awesome. It's a larger property, which is nice. Yeah, so it doesn't even have furniture inside of it, just like a few little things like that couch, an inversion table. They've really been choice with their furniture here. The nice thing is it's really not going to require much in the way of renovation. I would ideally like to get rid of the carpeting, but you know, it's nice enough. Like I probably wouldn't worry about it too much, to be completely honest. Yeah, so it's right on the water. That's awesome. And yeah, okay, so furniture, let's figure it out. Let's see how much furniture would cost. So this is a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom, 2,000 square foot property. So what I'm gonna do here is come over to the furnishing tab, and I'm gonna put in, so we're gonna do, let's say 2 queen bedrooms and 1 with 2 twins. Let's do 2 living rooms, because there's one in the basement there as well. 1 dining room, 1 kitchen, 3 bathrooms, miscellaneous. Probably not going to bother with a hot tub or a sauna, potentially a hot tub, but I'd probably just want to see what other properties in the area are doing and see if it's really going to be worth it. Being right on the beach, I don't imagine it's really going to be worthwhile. I don't think that would be a very popular amenity. We could certainly look around though to see what we see and see how well it could do. Here's a good one. This one has a hot tub and it run $332,000. So maybe that's a good indication that we should have a hot tub. But in any case, let's not get too ahead of ourselves here. Let's just say, I'm gonna say let's get the hot tub. You know, heck, let's do it for this analysis, just so we can kind of compare and see how it would do if we spent that extra money. Because I find that stuff like that, where it's a one-time expense, yes, there's ongoing maintenance, but it's not really a whole lot. It's generally going to give a good ROI on a property like this that's catered towards families and larger groups. So that brings our total furnishing cost to $21,100 approximately, and then our rehab work estimate, I'm going to bring that down to 0. I would of course talk to the listing agent, have my realtor talk to the listing agent to see exactly the condition of the property, have the inspector go through to see if there's anything that needs repairs. So for right now, what I can visually see, there's nothing really that needs to be done, but that might change as we get deeper into the acquisition process. Land transfer tax is not going to apply. That's just in Canada. Interior design and photography, I'm going to leave at $1,200. A lot of people like to kind of be skimpy here. This is the one area where you do not want to cheap out. You really want to put the investment into interior design and great photography because that is ultimately what's going to sell your listing more than anything almost. So I'm going to keep that in there and keep it at $1,200. And then let's put a 20% down payment. Now, again, like we've talked about on this channel, there's different opportunities to go, 5% down, 10% down, depending on your situation. But I just like to, when I'm running an analysis, use the 20% down number. So I'm always comparing apples to apples and not seeing something as just being a good deal purely because I'm able to get a smaller down payment on it. I want to know that it's actually a good deal and then make it even better by putting a smaller down payment on it if I can, if that makes sense. Let's go ahead and use the interest rate of like 6.5% just to be on the conservative end. Obviously things are going up, but Obviously this is going to depend as well on your own borrowing capability. So you would know for yourself what what interest rate you'd be looking at. But let's assume a 6.5% interest rate for this analysis. And a lot of people are out here saying that, like, absolutely no way you can make money. There's just no way to buy a home. There's no way to justify the return when you're paying 6.5% on a mortgage interest, or you're paying 7% in interest on your mortgage. And what I always tell them is it ultimately just comes down to the cash flow. That's just another expense on the business, right? Buying a short-term rental property, if you look at it that way through the lens of a business, you see that ultimately, as long as you're bringing in enough cash to offset that additional expense, that it's going to be a solid investment. As long as you've still got the cash on cash return there, and as long as you've got enough buffer to know that in a worst case scenario where interest rates continue to rise, or where the property doesn't bring in as much as you expect, that it's still going to produce a really solid return, then that's going to be a solid investment. Let alone just set aside the fact that as you hold on to this property, it's typically going to be appreciating quite a bit in an inflationary environment. When there's lots of inflation, property values go up in a dollar sense. And then the other thing is that you're paying down the principal on the mortgage the longer you own this property. And that's all due to the tenants that are staying there, the guests that are staying there, paying that down. So real estate is still a phenomenal investment. Cash flowing real estate, I should say, is still a phenomenal investment, even when interest rates are high. And I would argue, especially when interest rates are high, because so many more people right now are fearful. Whereas if you fast forward, or sorry, you rewind 12, 24 months, people were very greedy and properties were going for more than they were worth. Whereas now you can get really good deals and you see sellers starting to drop their prices, like we see with this one. But all that to say, let's just keep it at 6.5%. We'll go more into the detail of everything else on another video if you guys would like. So now coming over to cleaning fee per rented week. So this should represent the total cleaning fee per rented week for the property. So if this property is rented for an entire week, how many bookings is that going to be? I would say typically about 1.3 for a property like this, because you got to think you're going to have some weeks that get rented with just one guest, where it's going to be one cleaning. Other weeks that get rented for 1.5 guests, like you've got one guest that stays for 4 days, another that stays for 4 days, or you've got 2 cleanings in a week where you've got 2 guests staying throughout the week. So I would say probably about 1.3, and then and we can look at the average length of stay as well. Like we can dive into that in more detail. I'm just going to kind of estimate for this, but what I would say is, yeah, I'm going to go with 1.3 for this property. Again, I would dive more into detail for it if I were doing a real in-depth analysis, actually wanting to buy the property. And the other thing I want to know is what's the cost for an actual turnover. So if I'm doing an actual turnover on the property, what am I going to pay the cleaner? Well, I need to call some cleaning companies in the area. So for this, I'm just going to assume $300 to keep it conservative. But I would want to actually call cleaning companies in the area to get quotes on it before I really go ahead with this number. So that one I would want to double check by calling cleaning companies. But that means that if it's $300 to clean and I'm cleaning it 1 or 2 times per stay, that means about $390 per rented week in cleaning fees. And then next, I'm going to go over, and you'll notice I skipped over the projected income for right now. We're going to get to that in a minute. But just going through here and looking at the rest of the expenses here, there's the advertising and tech costs at $504. That's for our different softwares we're going to use. Yard and snow, I would say $1,200 is pretty fair, $100 a month for this property. Electricity, I'm just going to ballpark at about $3,000. But again, that's something I would have my agent talk to the seller, the listing agent about, so I could get a much more accurate number on that one. And then water, sewer, I'm going to say is probably going to be about another, it really depends. I'd probably just double check that with the listing agent as well. But let's just say maybe $1,500 for that. And then let's say cable internet is probably going to be about $80 a month times 12 months for our internet. I wouldn't do cable at a property like this. I would just do internet. And then we've got our accounting, which is another $1,000 for the year. Our property taxes, which I would grab from the listing itself if I can. Again, if not, asking the agent. So there's a lot of stuff here that, as you can see, are really going to come down to just asking the agent, getting a full picture of exactly what the carrying costs are going to be. Because if you don't know what the carrying costs are going to be, then you can't possibly expect to know what the return is actually going to look like. So for this one, they're estimating property tax at $222 a month. So let's put that in for right now, and we can obviously adjust once we would have talked to the agent. So the next thing it mentioned in the listing description, there's no HOA dues. So you can see here, plus no HOA dues and no city taxes. So no HOA dues. Annual membership fees, nothing. Maintenance reserve is just a percentage of the revenue, so we're going to leave that as is. And now the last thing we want to get to is our occupancy rate and our projected rental revenue. So let's try to see how much this property could actually generate in revenue. So for that, we're going to jump over here to AirDNA again, and I want to specifically filter for 3-bedroom properties. So you can see there's a whole bunch. I actually want to look at ones that are on the water, just like the one that we're looking at here. And to start with, I just want to grab the average data. So let's go in here and let's go for revenue. Wait for it to load here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab revenue for all 3-bedroom properties. Priced here, I'm going to use all. Sometimes what I'll do is go like economy to upscale or economy to luxury, depending on the property. But for this one, I'm just going to leave it at all for right now. And then we want to see all real estate types. We want to see just the entire place. We don't want to look at private rooms or shared rooms, both professionally and personally, individually managed. Guess for this one, given it's a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom, I would say this one, it's absolute bare minimum 6, but you've got the bedroom space and you've certainly got a lot of living space here as well. So I would say probably 8, maybe even 10 people. The bedrooms aren't huge, so it'd be tough to put bunk beds in them, but there is a nice basement space here. Or is it upstairs? Yeah, this is a pretty big bedroom upstairs that you could definitely fit a few people into. Yeah, I was mistaken about the bedrooms. So we can actually take out one of the living rooms because I thought there was a basement, but there's not, which makes sense given that's right on the waterfront. Yeah, so I'm going to say probably easily sleep 8 people here. So what I'm going to come in here and do is I'm going to update this so that we're actually just going to have one living room, which would be the one on the main floor there. That's going to automatically update the furniture and interiors package there. And then really what I'm looking at here is I want 3-bedroom properties that sleep, I'm going to say 6 to 8 people. I don't think we'd be able to fit more than that in this property. We just based on the bedrooms, the bathrooms, there's certainly plenty. But if you think if we have 2 queen over twin or twin over queen bunk beds in the upstairs room, that's going to allow us to sleep 6 people upstairs and then another 8, maybe 10. Yeah, maybe with a pull-out couch. I would say let's do 6 to 10 and see what that comes out to. Bathrooms, I'm just going to leave it all. Okay. So that means like in this data set, we've got 256 active listings you can see right here. Now that's what I like, because if you have 256 active listings, that means that you've got a decent, like statistically significant data set here. So I'm going to go ahead and download this data set here, and I'm going to see what the trend looks like, what the numbers look like. So here's the numbers that I like to look at. I like to look at 50th, 75th, and 90th percentile. I don't really care about too much, just because that's more of like a best case scenario, and I'm not going to run that right now. And then what I like to look at as well is I like to look at 2018, 2019, 2020, and then 2021, and then pace for 2022. So here, actually for pace for 2022, I'm going to go 2021, and that's going to be through, they've got data through October. So that's going to be 21, 10, and then pace. So 2022, 10. I'll show you what I mean by that in a minute. This is, I think, something that a lot of people make mistakes with. And they really leave a lot up to chance when they don't do this part properly. So I'm going to walk you through exactly how I like to analyze things, because the market is ever changing. I need to really understand the numbers in order to feel comfortable with an investment. So for 2018, all I'm going to do is sum up the 2018 numbers in the 50th percentile. So for 2018, I can start here, grab the 50th percentile numbers, go all the way down through to December, There we go. There's my number. For 75th, I'm just going to drag that over. That's going to be the exact same. And then for 2019, same. So this is pretty straightforward. 2019, I'm just grabbing 50th percentile numbers. Again, I don't really worry about the 25th percentile numbers or the 90th percentile numbers, just because ultimately I know I'm going to be able to do far better than the 25th percentile numbers. So for my conservative end, I like to use the 50th percentile. But I also know that it's going to be a bit aggressive to expect, especially in year one, to hit 90th percentile. I often will do it, but I just don't like to be that aggressive when I'm running projections. I prefer to be a lot more conservative in my projections, just to make sure there's lots of room for margin for error, essentially. So let's see here, and then let's just go ahead and drag these over so we can see, and let's look at what the overall trends are. Now, just so that I can, so this kind of makes more sense to me, I'm going to put this into dollars. Okay, so we can see that, let's look at the 75th percentile, which is indicative of what's happening with good hosts. Well, in 2018, they did $60,000 on average, and that's for this data set, right? This is for this set of 256 properties that represents 3-bedroom properties that sleep 6 to 10 people, right? So those properties in this area did $60,000 in revenue. The 75th percentile, I mean the top 25% of them in 2018 did 60K. Then they jumped up to 65. Then in 2020, they jumped back down to 60. And in 2021, they jumped up to 72. So this is actually a pretty weird trend. It's good to see this. This is why I really like doing this, because what you'll typically see in a lot of areas is that either in 2020 and 2021, they took a dive, or in 2020 and 2021, they took a jump. And so what happened is that markets that attracted a lot of international travelers would typically take a dive when the pandemic hit. But markets that were really great for domestic travel, so like those staycation type markets, you would see them skyrocket in 2020 and 2021. And so the reason I like to look at this pattern is to see, okay, well, if the numbers drop down in 2020 and 2021, I should be expecting them to come up in 2022 now that things are back opened up. And I like to look at that and see, did that happen? If not, why not? It just gives me an idea of what to expect. But what I see people doing all the time right now is they see that 2020 and 2021 did really well, and people are talking about this Airbnb bust, right? This Airbnb bust where properties are tanking, people are having to sell their homes. And yeah, that's happening to people that bought properties based on an assumption that things were going to continue to be as good as they had been in 2020 and 2021. I can tell you from experience, I owned properties through those years. They did insanely well. If I were projecting them to do that well, that would be purely insane. There's no way that they're going to produce that kind of income for years and years and years consistently. The reason that happened is because people couldn't travel internationally, so they traveled more domestically, and naturally that's going to calm down after the pandemic lifts. So if you're buying properties assuming they're going to do the revenue that they did in those outlier anomaly years, yeah, you're going to lose your shirt. It's not going to go well for you. And so what we want to look at is see the trend. If it did really well in 2020 and 2021, let's be more conservative in our projections and see what the trend was from 2018 to 2019 and kind of extrapolate that to figure out what the data is going to show us that the property would generate. Here, it looks like we're probably going to be around 70,000, but what I really want to know, like this is a little bit inconsistent, right? You can see that it jumped up. As you see, normally markets do just grow year over year. A lot of markets will do that. Very few are shrinking year over year. But then what you see is that it goes down during COVID, and you can see that happen with the 50th percentile numbers too, but then it jumped back up again during COVID. So that doesn't really make a lot of sense. So what I want to know is, how does 2022 compare to 2021? And so what I want to do in order to figure that out is I want to look at, how did 2021 do so far, right? What's the trend right now for the first 10 months of 2022? Well, if I go in here and I go, okay, we've got everything up until October. So let's grab those numbers there, that data, and let's figure it out for 75th percentile as well. And then I want to see how the first 10 months of 2021 did to compare to that. So not the entire year of 2021, just the first 10 months. So if I just go through to October, then you can see it's pretty well spot on for the 50th percentile and for the 75th percentile. So that's pretty crazy. It's doing almost exactly the same as it did the year prior. So that's something that, again, is really uncommon to see, where like literally you're within a few $100s on the average. So it's looking like it's going to hold steady at around the $70,000 mark, which actually kind of makes sense. So you can see what happened here in this market. Now that we look at it, what it's looking like is that in 2018, it did 60,000. It jumped up 5K in 2019, normal trend, normal upward trajectory. The pandemic hit, and it looks like this market was negatively impacted, not substantially, not like some markets where it just dropped dramatically, but you can see that it just kind of cooled down a bit. And then it just maintained its normal trajectory of, the next year you would presume it would grow to about $72,000. And you can see that this year it's staying right around there. So it looks to be a relatively stable market. You can see that nothing really changed too dramatically here. But it looks like we can project about $70,000 for this market. That's what I would project for this property in this market. So I'm going to go ahead and plug that in here and see how that looks. But the next thing I need to do before I jump into the actual returns is I want to figure out my projected occupancy rate as well. Because if it's a higher occupancy rate, that means more cleaning fees. If it's a lower occupancy rate, that means less cleaning fees. So to do that, I'm just going to be kind of scrappy with it here. And just for the sake of time, I'm just going to go in here. I'm going to look at 3-bedroom properties that accommodate 6 to 10 people, 6 to 10, hit apply. That's my occupancy rate. So it looks like it's near 100 for a big chunk of the year. And then it drops down to 94, 87, 93, and then in January, this is the slow season where it hits 70, 80. So I'm going to project about $90,000 on average. Again, if I were really running this analysis seriously, I would actually go and just take all these numbers and average them out for the year 2021. But I'm just going to assume about 90% occupancy rate on this property. So the cleaning fees you can see jumped up by a few $1,000s. So that makes it more, that means more cleaning fees because there's more people in the property. And so that brings our annual cash on cash return to 5.64%. So again, at face value, we looked at this market and we saw, okay, well, this market showed up on the BPTI report, really solid. This property looks to be a nice property with a good deal. It's on the water. It's already dropped in price. The seller's looking motivated to sell it. We look at the numbers look pretty good on it, but then you actually crunch them and you look at the actual return and you're at 5.64%. Now, for context, for anyone that's new here, we're aiming for a 15% or greater cash on cash return in an average scenario. We want our worst case scenario to be like right around break even. If everything were to all fall apart, we want to make sure that we're at least breaking even. And we can see already from this property that in a worst case scenario, we could conceivably bring in about $41,000 in revenue if we were hitting the 50th percentile. And so for this one, if you're bringing $41,000 in revenue, and let's even be conservative and drop our occupancy rate down to 50% for this, well, heck, you're still losing $13,000 a year on this property, which is a negative cash on cash of 10.92. So for this property, it's a no-brainer to me. I would not move forward with this property. I wouldn't even bother taking it any further than this because these numbers are just unacceptable to me. There's too much risk where in a worst case scenario, I could be losing money, let alone if interest rates go up. You can see here, if we play around with it, boom, there's some more money that you're losing out of your pocket every year if the interest rates go up 0.5%. So there's too much risk there, and the upside is not nearly significant enough. Because again, if we look at $70,000 in revenue and we've got our 6.5% interest rate here, and let's have a 90% occupancy rate, it looks like we'd have 5.64%. That means that we're cash flowing $6,800 a year. If we have too much overhead expense, if we have some unexpected things that need to be redone, there's just not enough buffer there. The 15% that we're aiming for, we're not even getting close to that. We need to perform really, really well to be able to hit that. And so I don't like these numbers. Now you might want to go in and look and see if this is like an outlier, but honestly, the majority of the properties that come up on this search are waterfront. So it's a really good indication of this property. It's not like all the properties are inland and this property's waterfront's got something that the other ones just don't. And again, like we can run the numbers as well. If you even want to take out the hot tub and assume we weren't purchasing that, then you're still looking at a slightly better cash on cash return, but still nothing really notable. So it's just not passing passing that test of hitting 15%. And more importantly, we're not able to mitigate the downside enough that we wouldn't potentially lose money on this property. So for this one, I wouldn't buy it. I wouldn't look into it as a short-term rental. I wouldn't be interested. But hopefully this is really interesting to you to see exactly how much properties in this area can go for, how much hosts can earn on Airbnb. You can see like some of these places are earning hundreds of thousands of dollars, doing really, really well. And so there's really, really good opportunity. If you can get a property like this, you can get a property that's going to bring in 150K. These numbers start to look a whole lot different really, really quickly. But you need to know what you're looking for. So if you want to know what to look for, make sure that you stick around, subscribe to the channel here. We post 2 new videos every single week talking about how to be successful investing in short-term rentals. We also talk about managing properties on Airbnb, hosting your own space. So if you want to learn more, make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you have any thoughts, any questions, any comments, let me know in the comment section down below. Otherwise, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.